This is Elton Kane for Finextra at Cybos, and I'm here with Warren Gardiner of FIS. Warren, it's day 2 of Cybos. You've had a lot of conversations already. What are the key topics you see emerging?
Well, as predicted beforehand, the 3 key topics which everybody seems to be focusing on, and most of the meetings that we're having, it's certainly a topic on everybody's agenda, is APIs, driven by largely in Europe around the PSD2 and XS2A legislation, which has just been passed recently, the Open Access Initiative in the UK, and some of the other initiatives globally. So it's a real issue for banks to think about how they're going to open themselves up, given they've not really been forced to do that before. The second area of which is a hot discussion is around real-time payments. It's happening in parallel to the API discussion, with the initiatives from EBA in Europe, in the Reserve Bank in Australia with NPP, G3 in Singapore, and the discussions in the US with the clearinghouses and so on. So it's a global phenomenon around real-time payments, and many banks are not necessarily well equipped to actually deal with that world right now. So that's another challenge for the banks that's occupying a lot of discussion here. And the third area is blockchain technology, which is really a technology discussion, but people are looking at with interest, trying to understand how they can apply that to a business problem, how they can use that blockchain technology from a payments business perspective. And nobody's quite cracked that nut yet, but there are a lot of interesting value propositions floating around. So that's one of the other questions that we're constantly getting with regards to FIS.
You mentioned access to account and PSD2. Are banks not seeing that as a threat with the enablement of new market entrants?
Certainly some banks are wondering about their business model and whether they're going to be disintermediated by a number of third parties, etc. We are certainly encouraging banks to think about it from a half-glass full perspective instead of a half-glass empty perspective, that every challenge presents a business opportunity. And I think there's a couple of banks out there that have adopted a similar that stance and are doing some interesting things. One which comes to mind is a bank which has opened up their APIs well in advance of the PSD2, XS2A legislation. They've been proactive in this area, and a number of really interesting applications have been developed. One, for example, is a kindergarten application, where a third-party developer on top of the bank's APIs has developed an application for the parents to manage their children's time at kindergarten, their schedule, the payments they have to make for their field activities, their school fees and so on. And it's turning out to be a very popular application that parents are downloading, because it's not a typical way for the bank to engage with their customers. It's more of a contextual application that speaks to every parent's problem at some point in their life dealing with their children. So there's a bank that's actually taken that whole challenge and turned it into a business opportunity to actually acquire new customers that have a specific problem, rather than looking at it and wringing their hands over it.
What are some of the best approaches you've seen, and what recommendations are you making to help organisations move into this open payments and open banking world?
Well, FIS, I think, is uniquely positioned, given its size and the assets that it has, to be able to approach those 2 topics not as separate topics, APIs and real-time payments, but actually to approach them as a single topic, because they are actually fundamentally linked. That if you're going to move into an API area and start offering APIs, then you should also be actually looking at that as offering a real-time service, not an offline service. So FIS is actually approaching this as an end-to-end business problem, not so much a technology problem. The technology's there, the technology exists, and no technology ever solved a business problem. It helps to solve the business problem, but without the right business approach to that, you can't solve the problem. So that's what we're doing, is we're bringing the technology that we've got here to play into a holistic value proposition to banks to help them with this.
That's great. Warren, thanks very much for your time.